Oh my gosh, I got my tennis shoes are on the table right there inside. I didn't even notice. They're fine. They're fine.
I can move them.
At this point, we're just kind of who we are.
Yeah.
So welcome, guys. I am Kari, the Mortician.
And I am Josh, the vault man / crematory operator.
/ my man / how many slashes can we give you?
A few. It's all right.
So we're going to do round 2 of burial vault installation questions here. So you guys loved the first round, had a lot of great questions for Josh, but we really haven't dove too deep into burial vaults. I still want to go out and follow a burial vault person as they're setting up and kind of give you a first hand. Just hasn't happened yet. But this is going to be our second best is 27 years doing it.
If I was still doing it, you could follow me, but
yeah. So we've got lots of questions you guys have submitted. I had posted on Facebook earlier today and just said, hey, this is coming. What do you guys want to know? So we're going to start with some of those questions as you are bringing and chatting and posting questions as well.
Hi from Wales.
Yeah. And Myrtle Beach. Hey, JW. So the picture that I kind of showed earlier today, which, can you guys see this? So it is what a lot of burial companies, vaults companies showing that casket without a vault. You get water, you get ground pressure with a simple grave liner, which is just a concrete box. You get the water, and then if you get the sealed, fancier, lined, then you're going to keep out the water pressure, the ground pressure, and things.
Yep.
So that's kind of what I'm referencing here with this first question. I never was a fan of this picture. I don't care how expensive a vault you got, is probably going to leak. This is a scare tactic to get families to buy more expensive vaults.
Well, with that being said, I will say that the lined units, they're usually, it's a type of like high density plastic. It's almost, I don't know exactly what it is, but the lined units with a butyl type seal in the cover, if they're installed properly and sealed properly, they do not leak. I guarantee it, because I've seen them disinterred that have been in the ground for 20 or 30 years, and there is no water in there. I mean, they're watertight.
Well, the seal was, what I've always been told, is the same seal as around an airplane window.
Mm-hmm. It's the same type of stuff.
It's a tar-based
butyl seal. And the way it works with the burial vault, though, is those covers are, anywhere between 500 and 700 pounds, most of them. And the weight of them going down on the base that the casket sets in, it seals it. It seals it tight. And then when you put earth on top of it and add that weight to it, it pushes it down even more. And again, if the seal was installed correctly in the cover when it was manufactured, and it was sealed right by the vault man who put it in the ground, then you technically shouldn't get any water in there. So
that seal's the same as like on an airplane. You get on an airplane, you don't question it, but you question it for burial vaults. So there's a good question. Yep. Why question one but not the other?
I agree.
I'm considering moving my great-grandparents from their current cemetery to the Great Lakes National in Holly, Michigan. Mm-hmm. I've gotten price quotes from various funeral homes. The cemetery has told each funeral home different scenarios about their burials. One funeral home was told they're in a long crypt. The other funeral home was told they're in regular vaults. How can I find out what's accurate? I would check with the funeral home who did the original burial. You're going to know if they were sold a vault or not. If they were sold a vault, and also get records from the cemetery, because they're going to have, whether it's a lawn crypt section, because it's not just going to be one lawn crypt that was there. The whole section will be lawn crypts.
Yep.
So just ask the question, is this section lawn crypts or not? Yeah, send me the information. Email it to me. I will call and get it.
Yeah, because it's gonna
I will call and get it.
It's gonna vary from section to section, because they do all types of stuff at the national cemeteries, just like they do in Fort Custer.
I think that she's saying the original cemetery is giving different information.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what you're asking, Callie. But you're welcome. Email me Kari at KariTheMortician.com and give me all the specifics. And I like investigating. So
she's a good sleuth.
get me some info and I'll get you some answers. So let's go to, how do you put a vault in the ground during the winter months when the ground is frozen?
Well, that has to do with whoever's taking care of the cemetery, which technically they're called a sexton. Some people know that, some people don't, but the sexton digs the grave. And if the ground is like super frozen, if there's more than a foot of frost, then usually they will use a grave warmer to warm the ground overnight and kind of unthaw it, depending on the size of the backhoe you got or the depth of, the depth of freeze in the ground. It depends. There's only been, doing this in the state of Michigan where we're at, there's only been a couple times in my 27 years working throughout every winter that I was not able to do a graveside setup because they couldn't get the grave dug. Most of the time, they figure out a way to do it. And that was my job. I show up, the grave's already dug, I install the burial vault, set up all the equipment over the graveside, the lowering device the casket sits on, and everything else. When it's done, I lower the casket in, pack my stuff up, put the cover on the vault. Now, with that being said, if I show up and there's a cave in the grave and nobody else is around and they don't have a backhoe or any number of situations, then I put my planking around the grave and jump down in there and dig it out with a shovel and level it off. So I've had to do that hundreds of times. Yeah. So it's part of the job.
Has the ground ever been so wet that you couldn't do the vault?
There has been a couple times where I've showed up and the grave, it was like a swimming pool. There was water to the very top of the grave. And you cannot put a vault in like that. It's water displacement. Believe it or not, that 800-pound vault will float like a boat if you put it in there. And it has the tendency to want to flip over. So usually, no, if it's full of water, you have to have it pumped out. And I've also had them where the water just kept coming in. So I had to seal the vault on top of the ground and then put it all in one piece after they pump that water out. And then they fill it in real quick. So it's just, I mean, once you do it long enough, you know what you're facing when you show up and look at that grave and see the condition of the grave or what you're dealing with. And there's ways to work around it, but you gotta, you learn, you just learn it.
Yeah.
It's just on job, on the job teaching, really.
Well, and we have high water tables here in Michigan. Like it is what it is. There's water under the ground. You're not beating Mother Nature in a lot of ways.
And a lot of times these old cemeteries, what they did was they buried people where they couldn't grow crops because they didn't want to waste the ground, like a good piece of ground that they could farm and get a crop, get money out of, get food out of, whatever.
Right.
They didn't want to bury people there. So that's why there's a lot of cemeteries on hilly ground or down in swampy ground or stuff like that. So, I mean,
yeah, it's the second caliber ground choice.
Yeah, it is.
How does a cemetery or vault installer measure natural shifting of the earth?
Say that one more time.
Like, how do you measure natural shifting of the earth, specifically for older plots that had burials 20, 30, 40? So, Leo, what I'm guessing you're saying here is like, okay, a grave is supposed to be here, but you have ground shifting and things. So if it's a burial from 40, 50 years ago, is that casket still going to be here, or will they have moved over? And how do you maybe...
I've never really seen that, but what I have seen is, say somebody's supposed to be buried right here and the grave didn't get dug right or it didn't get installed right, and they're shifted like this. So when they go to dig the next grave next to it, you're running into the corner of a burial vault or whatever. But what they do with that, before they dig that, if there's other people buried in that row or in that section, they'll take a probe and they'll probe the ground. And usually they'll run into it. Or when they start to dig, they'll run into it. And then they'll have to move their grave site over a little bit. I mean, it varies. But yeah, I used to see that a lot in older cemeteries and older sections. They'd start to dig a grave and then they'd have to cover it back up and move over.
Be skewed.
Yep.
I'm curious how the grave diggers dig a grave beside of someone else without scratching or hitting the other vault. And then there's several responses. And I want to just say today, I had a burial today. And one of my favorite things is when you're burying the spouse of someone who's already been buried, and you look down on the hole and you can see the first spouse's vault, because that's how close these burials. I mean, there is a margin of under 6 inches.
And sometimes it's super tight.
And so they're right there. So the family got to see, the dad's vault that was there and exposed. And then they asked that question, like, how do you dig these so perfectly that you're not injuring? And the cemetery personnel was like, if we hit the other vault, we have to then do a disinterment, a reinterment. We have to put them in a new vault.
If they puncture the vault or break the vault. But most of those guys are skilled enough at running those backhoes that when they go down, they can feel when they're hitting a vault. And a lot of times, once they get that grave dug, you'll look at the vault that's sitting next to the burial you're doing, and there'll be some scratch marks on it from that bucket, but not enough to damage it. So, I mean, it's just how experienced is your grave digger? How experienced is your sexton? I mean, but I have seen vaults get punctured. I have seen that happen, and they've had to disinter them and reinter, and it depends.
How long does it take to install a vault?
I mean,
if you're doing, let's say you're doing what we call a drop off. So there's no service, there's no anything, like from when you get there, the cemetery is just there waiting or shows up. So there's no waiting on somebody else. That casket is already there with the person. And then, if you just go from point A to point B quick.
If the grave is dug properly and there's no issues, then, I mean, from the time I got there, because I usually used a pickup in a motorized vault trailer, and the vault trailer, there was a boomway that you could lift off the end of the trailer and slide out, and you'd have to, brace around the grave with boards. I used aluminum planks later in my career. When I first started, they were big, thick oak planks that weighed more than I did. But you make sure those are braced far out from the grave so they can handle the weight. You pull your crane way out, lift the vault up with your hoist, push it out over the grave, and put it in. Doing it that way with nothing else happening, no mishaps, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I mean, you can set one. Just depends on how skilled your vault guy is and how much experience he has, really.
And I'm trying to keep up. I have my laptop going. I've got my phone going. So I'm reading questions submitted earlier and your questions you guys are putting up right now. What is the minimum for vault lid to top of the ground once buried in the state of Michigan? Florida is 12 inches. People have also asked, do you have to be 6 feet?
6 feet is a myth. Yeah. 6 feet is a myth. I can tell you that, because most of my, like the straps on my lowering device that the casket sits on, that I lower the casket down into the vault on, they couldn't reach down to a 6 foot grave. I mean, they just couldn't. The normal depth of most grave holes that I dealt with were 4 to 5 feet. 4.5 foot's pretty average. That's pretty much across the board.
Yeah. My brother and sister were buried across from each other. The headstones are super shifted after like 45 years. Is it just the vaults shifted or just the headstones shifted?
I mean, to me, a lot of times with that, depending on how big the headstones are, a lot of times it's the guys that are mowing the cemetery that keep running into the headstones. I mean, I've seen that a ton. And back to the depth question for the state of Michigan. I don't really know. I've heard 14 inches. I've heard other people say 18 inches. I can tell you that I've seen burials where once I got the cover on that vault, that there was maybe 6 inches of dirt on top of it. A lot of people say, as long as you can grow grass on top of it, it's fine. It's the vault's for us to protect the casket. Okay, in theory, but I've seen townships get sued over vaults not being buried low enough. Family members coming out and realizing it's only 4 to 6 inches under that dirt.
Yeah, which is
not okay in my book, but I've seen it happen. But like, if I buried somebody and they were that close to the surface, I would usually look at the sexton and go, hey man, I'm going to pull this whole thing out. You need to dig it deeper. I'd wait till they dug it deeper and then I'd put it back down it, because I'm not going to be liable for that. And that's just not morally and ethically not a good thing.
Okay.
No, not with me.
Somebody had asked, what states do you need a vault? I'm going to have to research and
I
find.
don't know that.
There's no like one master list for what is law in every state for a lot of different things.
No.
This is where I go back to. I wish every state had the same funeral laws for everything mortuary related. In Michigan, it's not a law that you have to have a burial vault, but it may be a cemetery requirement. There are states or conditions where they do require or is law that you have a vault. Some cemeteries will not allow a grave liner or that basic concrete lining vault.
Nope.
They require something beyond that. So it just depends, on your state. Again, goes back to what I say to you guys a lot. Know the laws of your state.
I just saw a couple things that I want to answer on.
Yeah.
I saw one about Jewish burials, and they said Jewish people don't use vaults, or traditional Jewish burials don't use vaults. They don't, but what they do is they use an air seal, which is an inverted vault. So instead of sitting in the vault, it's like a dome top, but it's concrete. And I'd lower the casket down in onto the dirt and then put the dome top over it. So that casket is actually sitting on the earth, but it still has protection from getting crushed by a backhoe
Butter
or whatever.
dishing.
Yeah, butter
I've
dishing,
referred
like
to it
Kari
sometimes.
talks about.
Yeah.
That answers that question. The other one I just saw was he said in the state of Minnesota, if the ground's too frozen, that they hold them till spring. Well, they do the same thing in Michigan, but generally we're in middle to southern Michigan, and they don't have that a lot. In northern Michigan, yes, they'll put them in a crypt, sealed in the vault, and then they'll wait till the spring, and then they'll do all their spring burials. So that's a common thing too. But I never ran into that too much where we're at.
No. So what happens, just because there's snow and it's because it's cold, and even if it gets super cold, it's about how it gets cold and when the snow comes down. Snow acts actually as an insulator. So if you get a layer of snow on the ground, it insulates the ground and keeps the heat down in the ground, which I know sounds crazy, but that's kind of why in our area we don't get the ground freeze like other areas do. So the snow actually works to our benefit.
Yep.
If there's a graveside service, does the vault guy wait till all have left before the cover's pulled on? So talk about all your time spent sitting in that truck.
Yeah, I'm the majority of my job as a vault man. People would ask me what I do for a living, and I'd say I hurry up and wait, because you got to hurry up. And by that, I mean, you have to be there before everybody to make sure the vault's installed, your equipment's set up, tent, fake grass lowering device, whatever they wanted. And then you're just sitting back and waiting. And usually I was by the graveside when they got there with the casket. I helped guide the casket onto the lowering device, or there's different ways of doing it, but I was there. And then they do their service. And then, after everybody leaves, usually somebody from the funeral home will stay after. Sometimes a couple family members will stay after. And then, then I would seal the vault and pack my stuff up and get out of there. So.
Well, and thinking the other day, so I got a call the other morning from the vault guy. It was my day not in the office. I'm always working, I feel like, so it's never a day I'm not working. But got a call from the vault guy at like 9 a.m. and I was like, oh my gosh, why is he calling me?
It's never good.
And he's like, hey, did you order a vault for today? I was like, yeah, for this cemetery and stuff. He's like, well, the hole is dug for a cremation burial.
Which is not big.
So then your stomach drops and you wonder what's going to happen and can they facilitate it? So we went round and round, and finally I was like, okay, what is the bottom line? Like, can the guy dig the grave? He's like, yep, just drag the feet. Have everybody drag their feet like 15 minutes. Luckily, it was a private burial, which means the family knew everybody who was going to be there. I called the family, let them know what was going on. And so they called the, 20 people or whatever that were going to be there and could drag their feet. It was the cemetery's just miscommunication. It just happened. Things happen. Funeral directors forget to call in an opening. We forget to order vaults. We forget to do things. And it can work out. It makes you feel like cruddy poo because you don't want to let down a family. You don't want anything to go wrong in this process. It's a one-time thing.
And that's, I can tell you, the last thing the family's going to remember is what they deal with at the graveside, because that's the last part of the whole process. And as a vault man, that was I used to hate that the worst, when you'd get that call going, hurry up and get to this cemetery. They forgot to call in the vault or whatever. And then I'd get there and there's family members standing around watching you do what you have to do, which, I mean, I do it the same whether someone's watching or not. But if something bad happened, something went wrong, some of my equipment broke doing what I'm doing, then, then I got an audience, and that can be awkward. I mean,
do gnats or bugs get inside the vault and the coffin to the deceased person? My parents are indoor in a mausoleum, and the gnats are horrible. Just wondering.
That I don't know in a mausoleum. I never dealt with crypts or mausoleums.
So. Yeah, because the crypts are already in the cemetery, so he wouldn't be putting in the crypts.
No.
Bugs can get in at any point into the casket prior to burial. One of the worst moments, and I don't know why this bothered me. A family found a butterfly outside at the funeral and brought it into the funeral home and put it in the casket before we closed it. So we locked this poor butterfly in with a dead person. It still bothers me, the fact that this poor butterfly was buried alive with this dead person. The family thought it was the most magical thing. But this thing suffocated and died in the darkness, buried in the...
It happens.
Oh my gosh,
it
drives me nuts.
There's some of that stuff that's unavoidable sometimes.
Gives me anxiety thinking about it. But things can get in, and things can get in. Especially if you have a wooden casket in a mausoleum. It's open, there's airspace.
Yep.
There's vents in the back of mausoleums to let the air move. The things can go in just like they can go out. So there's no way to know for sure that there's nothing in there.
I just saw somebody ask, they said their grandparents were in wood caskets and buried in metal vaults.
Yeah.
Now, the only metal vaults I know are Clark metal vaults. They asked if they were watertight. As far as I know, no, they're not. I've set those, and basically Clark metal vaults are a flat metal bottom, and they've got like hooks on the side of the dome top. You put the flat metal bottom in the grave, you lower the casket down in on top of it, and then you put that dome top over it until you hear those. You got to line it up right and make them click. But no, those are not watertight. The only vaults I know that are watertight are the line vaults with the butyl seal. That's it. And yes, Clark vaults are a pain.
I just imagine any dirt or anything in that. It's never going to click.
And it doesn't create a good seal. It just doesn't. Those things are a pain, and they're hard to set. They are.
My father-in-law died. They hit my mother-in-law's vault and cracked it while using the backhoe. What is the liability? So they would just have to disinter mother-in-law and put her in a new vault. If the family was like, yeah, that's what we need to have happen, it's going to require the funeral home being participatory. So if that person comes above ground at all, you have to have a disinterment permit. The funeral home has to be involved. And if, let's say, you buried the person in the wrong grave and they needed to be slid sideways one grave space, you don't have to have a disinterment permit. They're not coming above ground.
Well, yeah.
The funeral home's going to want to oversee it because they want to make sure things are done correctly. But by law, you don't have to.
See, and I was just going to say, you still have to have permits if you're going to pull them up above that ground. Right.
Yep. Is that your son? How old
you do not look that old.
Am I old looking?
No, you are not.
I'm not feeling the best today.
No,
I have some vertigo, something happening. So as long as I'm laying down, great. As soon as I stand up, the world is spinning.
And no, I'm older than Kari by a few years. So
is your tattoo finished yet? Yeah, I got it. It was all completed the same day. So I got a tattoo 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
For my niece. I've been wanting it since she had died. She was killed 14 years ago now, insane. And I had wanted a Japanese cherry blossom branch, which is a symbol of life. And she died when she was 7. I had wanted 6 flowers on and one flower falling. And so that's why I got
and it looks awesome
2 weeks ago. So I was super excited to finally get it done. What is the most requested type of burial vault? I know from my side, but what have you seen
the most requested? Usually just a plain grave liner is what most people order. I mean, honestly, and that's just a concrete base, concrete top, no seal in it, just to protect the casket from getting smashed or getting stuff on it. But with those, you're still going to get water in there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
hydrostatic pressure, which is the pressure of water underground pushing against that. If it doesn't have a line unit and the vault's not lined, eventually water's going to seep in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen there's the grave liners, which are just concrete with no seal. Then there is what is considered a guardian, which is a grave liner, but the cover has a butyl seal. And so the cover seals to that base. Now, those, I've seen disinterments with those where when you bust that top and take the top off, it honestly looks like somebody stood on top of the casket and beat it with a hammer or a ball bat. Now, that's rare, but what that is that thing fills up with water and it pushes that
Mm-hmm.
casket up against that cover over and over again over the years. And it does. That's what it looks like. I mean, I looked at it like, what the heck happened to this? But that's why I always tell everybody, if you're worried about water getting in there, then get a lined unit because that will prevent that. So,
Well, and a lot of people, so like, I know that there's a big discussion that funeral directors are going to push sales. Here is my approach when I talk to families about vaults, and you can ask any family I ever meet with. I explain why cemeteries require vaults. It's not a law, it's a cemetery requirement. It's twofold thing. One, it protects the integrity of the ground pressure around the casket, and one protects the integrity of the cemetery. You go in an old section of the cemetery, it goes like this as you walk through, because as that ground caved in around that casket and pressured in around the casket, the ground collapses and it's very uneven. That's why cemeteries requiring vaults. It is a personal choice. I always show them kind of the two main differences. The grave liner, which is meets the requirements of the cemetery. It is a basic concrete box, concrete base, concrete lid. There is no seal, there's no water protection, there's no anything around it, but it meets the requirements. Then you can go up to one that seals, that has a seal on it, that has a liner. Nothing is 100% proof, obviously, but what do you want? And families will be like, well, what do you think is the best? No. And I will not answer this question for anybody, for caskets, for vaults. It is all personal choice. Nothing is about my preference. Nothing is about my opinion. It is what a family wants and what they want. And so I know that's not how every funeral director approaches. I know that there is high pressure sales. I know that there's people who push an agenda. And I know there's funeral directors who will try to sell you something to accommodate a feeling. Not how I approach it. But that's kind of how I present vaults in a nutshell. Are all vaults the same size?
no, all vaults are not the same size. There's a standard size of vault, but then for bigger people, you have what's that?
No, I'm having an internet issue.
Oh, that's no good.
Yeah.
No, all vaults are not the same size. You have oversized vaults, and I mean, I've seen great big people be buried in the bottom half of a 500-gallon septic tank with just a slab top on it. Now, that's a big person, but it just depends. Depends on how big the person is. But for the most part, across the board, I'd say 80% of people are buried in one size of vault. Yes. So.
Yeah, we're having internet issues and questions are not coming up. Nothing is.
Oh, that's a bummer.
We're spinning. Do you guys see this spinning, spinning, spinning?
What is physically done? Correct a sunken footstone or headstone. They have to move the stone. They have to re-pour your foundation and get it level again, and then just reset the stone. But that's the only way to correct that.
Yeah, you have to pull the whole thing up,
Yeah.
put a new base under, and go from there. So
yeah, basically what they do is pick the stone up and move it, re-pour the foundation, go from there.
yeah, I can't see your questions, guys, unless they're popping up. So post them, retype them so they're popping up for us. Talk about. I mean, you've done a lot of disinterments. We've talked about the nasty, smelly, funky juice.
Mm-hmm.
Is family been present during those or not present? Like, talk a little more about disinterments because I do get a lot of questions about that.
Most of the disinterments that I've been witness to or been along on or done or whatever, no, there's no family around. It's usually just me, cemetery personnel and usually the funeral director, and that's it. Or if it's I've had a couple that were murder investigations and they wanted them dug back up. Now there you're going to have law enforcement there, the ME's usually there, the medical examiner. Um, so it varies, but usually there's no family there. No.
Can a funeral director be turned in for cursing while lowering the casket into the grave?
Well, I mean,
So technically, like Michigan has a state law
yeah.
that you cannot curse around a deceased body. Obviously, most of the time, you're not going to be around when the director is around the body. But if you are there and you witness that, you can turn them and write a letter to the state and report them. There's going to be an investigation.
Oh.
They may just get a slap in the hand, whatever it is. But you can definitely, call the funeral home if they're not the owner or whatever and report them to the funeral home. But if you want to take it to a state level, you can.
That's just
not much is going to happen.
That's just unprofessional.
It's unprofessional.
Go
ahead.
I saw Samuel say it was his first day as a vault setup
Yeah.
guy. Well, hey, congrats. Good luck.
Can vaults cave in?
They can. I mean, if they're manufactured poorly or if the backhoe hits them and nobody says anything and you fill a grave next to that one or whatever, yeah, they can cave in.
Is there any regulations regarding high pressure sales when cemeteries are selling monuments? I was told if you love your grandma and mom, you should buy this. So at the end of the day, this is one thing that bothers me. I don't care how high pressure sales anybody is. You have a choice to buy something or to not buy something. No matter what industry, no matter where you're going, no matter if you're car shopping, if you're couch shopping, if you're whatever shopping, you have a choice. No one is making you purchase anything. Yes, you are going to encounter high pressure sales. You are going to encounter people in this business who try to use that. If you loved them, you would.
Comes down to morals and ethics.
You don't have to purchase anything, though. You choose to purchase something. So it's not the funeral director conned you or made you. At the end of the day, you make a personal choice. So I'm not agreeing that what they say or what they're doing is okay, but at the end of the day, you're an adult and you're making a choice. So you can't blame that choice on somebody else all the time.
Nope.
That's my words on that. So no, you can't turn somebody in for saying that. You can't. That's their tactic. It's just like trying to sell a car that they've patched up and you get it 5 miles down the road and something happens with it and it's not covered in the warranty you didn't buy. It's just part of the process.
Yep.
Unfortunately, at some places. And you have the option and you have the choice to go to a different funeral home, to go to a different car lot, to not purchase what it is you're purchasing. But if you sign on the dotted line and you pay that money, that is your choice. Your choice.
Yep.
Bring on the hate. For you personally, is setting up for a child's burial more difficult emotionally?
Oh, yeah.
Do you connect to it as much as like the funeral director who sees the body and everything, or how does that?
I just think like kids, babies, stuff like that. Yeah, they were always harder for me. I mean, it was part of the job and I could deal with it fine, but it hit you in a different place for sure. Yeah. I mean, how could it not?
I'm missing a part of a question. I think Leo says caskets versus prescriptions. People act like funeral homes don't have overhead or have to buy themselves dinner. I mean, that's the truth. Like, we are selling a product that is presented to us at a certain price. And just like anything, we have to mark it up to make a profit off of it, to pay bills.
Oh,
because yes, we do have overhead. It's a business at the end of the day. And that is something that I would love if we could offer whatever a family wants at no cost. Do you want burial? Do you want cremation? Here's the options. Choose what you want for your loved one not based on cost, but that's not how our world
No,
works.
it's not realistic.
It's you can't, why do I keep going to car sales? But you can't go out and just purchase whatever car you want. Just because you want you know, why do I want to say Maserati, but just because you want like a Mercedes doesn't mean you can go get it if what you can afford is a Kia. You purchase within your means, and you know, get what you can afford.
Yep.
But I would love to be able to offer everything. But it is a business. We have employees, a crap ton of employees. What it takes to operate a funeral home,
A ton of overhead.
is insane. The
Ton of
amount
overhead.
of materials we have to have, the equipment, the vehicles, the staff. It is huge. And I think a lot of people don't understand the backside operation of a funeral home.
No,
The 24-hour service that we have to offer. So it's a lot.
It's a ton of overhead to provide the service that people expect. That's what I will say. I mean,
yeah, as Marshall says, if any funeral director says that, run. If a funeral home is pressure selling you like that, say thanks, bye-bye, go somewhere else. You don't have to work with that person. If that is their approach, find somebody else. Find somebody else, and do not hesitate. If you don't feel comfortable working with somebody, they have your loved one.
right.
And if you don't feel comfortable buying a bookmark from them, don't trust them with your loved one. Go somewhere else. Pay them for what they've done. Move on to somewhere else.
Yep.
Do not hesitate. You have to turn a profit to same business. Have you ever visited Spring Grove Cemetery in Cincinnati? Yes, I have a whole video. So check my channel for Spring Grove Cemetery. I did a whole video and tour there. It was lovely. It's huge. It's insane. Hey, Nancy. Why did I say it? Nancy. How deep do you bury cremated remains? Nancy wants to know.
Those are usually buried a foot deep, maybe 10, a foot and a half most of the time.
I have buried, and there's usually not vault guys there for that. The sexton digs the hole, or the gravedigger digs the hole, and then I will always offer the family if they want to place the person, the urn in the hole, or I will do it, which means down on my knees, down laying into the hole. Yeah. And there's been times, even full stretch down, how long are my arms? 2 feet?
Yeah.
Down in the hole.
They get crazy.
Don't reach the base.
Right.
And you have to let it go, and they kind of drop a little bit. And sometimes they're not down very far. So it just depends on the grave digger.
Yeah, it depends on who's digging it.
How many green burials have y'all done? So it's becoming a thing in our area just now. We are super vanilla Midwest here in the middle, and we're just now getting green burial certified cemeteries in our area. Like the first one anywhere around us is just happening. There's one that calls himself Green Burial about 35, 40 minutes away, but they bury in cardboard boxes, and that's not green burial certified. That's not green burial at all. And so we're just getting the first one in our area. It's going to require vault companies to help do the lowering, or funeral homes purchasing straps that they wash to lower down the shrouded body or the wicker casket or whatever. So it's going to be an interesting.
Because technically in a green burial, again, I would have used a boom truck. I would have used my motorized trailer with a hoist on it or something like that. And with a green burial, you're not supposed to have anything motorized or anything like that, technically, when you're burying them. So.
And we would just need really the lowering device per se from the vault company, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
With that. But all right. Let me do a couple more here. And then we had a bait and switch done on burial vaults. It was horrible. We paid for the monocella and was given the marquee. What is the marquee?
I'm guessing it's like a guardian. Same thing as a guardian.
Gotcha.
Like I was just talking about, like a concrete box, but with a sealed top. And the monticello is your first level of a sealed vault. And that, honestly, for the money, I think the monticello is the best vault that's made. I mean.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, that's what... If I was to do something for a family member, that's the vault I would probably choose, is a monticello, because it has a liner, it has a spray coating, it has a seal. It's not ornate. It's just simple. But poop on them for trying to switch you out. But kudos to you for grabbing and understanding and like seeing that they were trying to do that. That's naughty.
Yeah, that is naughty.
We'll put that in the that's naughty category. What's the purpose of being cremated than getting buried? Why cremation? I think a lot of people do it. You can use less grave space. I think there's also, because you can put multiple cremated remains on one grave space, people see the need for having a place to go to pay respects, not just for the spouse or just for the children, but for the extended family, for having a space that they are. There's also people who have a serious fear of being buried in a casket. They don't want to go in the ground like that.
Nope.
But the family doesn't want to keep them at home and they don't want to scatter them. They want a place. So that cremation and then burial of the cremated remains meets the needs of all of that. So there are a lot of people who do that now. And because, Sally doesn't want to take home mom and set her in her closet.
Yeah, and leave her there.
Forever. Because then Sally's, children have to one day figure out what to do with Sally and her mom. Always think ahead. That's one of my biggest. Hi, Kari. Is it legal to be buried with your dog's ashes? This is a big question you guys ask. It depends on the cemetery. It depends on the state law. Like, it was a big thing because New York just finally allowed for statewide that you could bury animal cremated remains with a human. So I always tell families, if you're putting your animal, if they say, hey, can we bury our blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whatever you put in with mom when I'm not watching is up to you. Don't tell me. I'm not investigating and looking in the casket thoroughly before burial. It's not illegal or anything, but some cemeteries do have requirements. You can't commingle animals and humans in the same cemetery.
Yep.
And including cremated remains.
Samuel's asking, what would be my biggest piece of advice for a vault guy starting out? My biggest piece of advice would be take your time and use some common sense, because stuff can go bad real quick when you're dealing with that much weight and setting those vaults. And just use your common sense and take your time until you get a feel for it. And the other thing I would say is always inspect your equipment you're using and do preventative maintenance on your equipment. Make sure your equipment is always maintenanced up, like your sling that you pick your vault up with, your sling cables. Make sure that those aren't fraying. As soon as they do, replace them. And just make sure your equipment is in top shape, because when you're hanging that much weight above the ground and something snaps, it goes south quick. So safety, that'd be my
safety first.
Yep.
That just makes me think of Pretty Woman. I'm a safety girl. Shoot. That's terrible. All right, guys, we're going to wind down. Thank you for joining us for round 2 of Vault Installer Guide.
Lots of good questions. Thank you.
Yeah. If you want part 3, let us know and we'll do a part 3 of this. You guys like to know about different areas of things, and Josh has so much knowledge in especially the burial vault side. And Monticello is a Wilbert. Tiffany works at a cemetery.
Okay. Yeah. But to me, honestly, I dealt with Doric products, Wilbert products, Eagle products, Tri-Guard products over the years. And the best out there to me is Wilbert. They make the best funeral products. Doric's probably second, but Wilbert's the stuff.
Nice. Someone says part 3. And thank you, Brian. I appreciate you. So I guess maybe we'll do a part 3 coming up. So thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See ya.